Hello, everybody. How's it going? Ben Gothard here with the Project Egg podcast, the #1 place for entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to come get the education and inspiration they need to turn their dreams into reality. Today, I am very excited to welcome Stefan Pretty from Scotland. How you doing today, Stefan?
I'm good, Ben. Thanks very much for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, especially because you're on the show today. Now, guys, Stefan is the founder of Subly, and we're going to get more into that later on. But Stefan, let's jump right in. My first question for you is, what is your story?
Sure. It's a long answer to that question, actually. So I'll try and keep it condensed for you.
No, we want the long answer. We want the
Okay.
long and dirty. Yeah.
We're going deep then. Let's do it. Nobody told me this was going to be a therapy session. um, yeah. So it was funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and I flashed back to something that happened when I was like 8 years old. So me and my cousin used to be like we're really good friends, but like we used to like always like ideate business ideas. Back when Pokemon was hot, it still is apparently. And we were like discussing like let's do like a Pokemon theme park and all this stuff, and we were just mad about like business ideas. Anyway, so at that time I had no idea what even the word entrepreneur meant. Like I didn't know that what like try and spell that at 8 years old. And my dad, this is when mobile phones and cell phones were like a thing, like a new thing really for like the current generation. And you were like privileged to have a mobile phone at that age. And my dad gave me and my sister our first business cards. My sister's 3 years older than me, and basically he put on my sister like singer and actress and all the things that she was interested in. I was wanting to be a pilot when I was 8 years old, right? But he wrote on mine potential entrepreneur, and I was like, why did he do that? Like maybe he saw something that I didn't at that time. And it's just funny how like looking back, I'm 28 now. That's like 20 years ago, and he did that. So anyway, so the full story is I basically was in university studying civil engineering, but at the same time, I'd already been making websites. I'd been, really interested in design, photography, and I was really versed with Photoshop. Thanks Adobe for letting everybody get away with pirating it, because that's probably started so many careers in innovation you wouldn't believe it. Back in the day, when I think it was Photoshop 5 or something. Anyway. So I was really interested in like the design aspect of things, and I started kind of dabbling with HTML, and I was getting frustrated because I was always like, okay, I want to make it do more now. Like, how can I do more with my skills? So I started a project, and it was basically it was kind of like a voting project, but it was kind of like thumbs up or thumbs down. Yes, it was called Yeah But No, so like yes or no, and you could publish like videos, songs, any rich content. And basically, my buddy that I met, he was a back end developer, and he was like, "I'll do it with you." So we did it together. And about halfway through the project, he was like, "No, I don't have enough time to do this." He was like, "Here's the code." So I was like, "All right, cool." So I just started reading the code and like reverse engineered it, and then finished the project, and basically taught myself like back end development. And then I started doing agency work. I went out and sold my first website for like £100. I was like, yeah, making money. At the same time as all of this, I was also doing like other side projects like student pub crawls, as I said, photography, and then eventually a couple more side projects as I learned, programming. Got featured on like actually we were mentioned. One of the side projects I got that I did was mentioned on Dutch television or something. It was called Social Whispers, and then a couple of other projects. Some got picked up and went viral. And yeah, I just kind of grew arms and legs from there. But the agency side of things was always like my bread and butter. So I was doing like consulting, web development. My skills were getting sharpened over time through that. And then the other key component from my full skill set was, well, I've got these skills. How do I sell them? So I learned how to do sales, but more importantly, how to do online marketing, because I accidentally stumbled across basically search engine optimization and SEO, and realized I was like, I kind of understand this. This clicks really well with me. Started doing experiments and trying to work on my portfolio website. And eventually, you know, we were number 2 in my city in Scotland where I was living at the time. I forgot to miss a point. I dropped out of university after 2 years. I quit. My dad unfortunately passed away, and I was like, you know, one of the things he said to me was, whatever you decide to do in life, I'll support you 100%. So, you know, that was in the back of my head. I was like, life's too short. So I just quit university and went full time with my, like, the agency side of things. So yeah, from there, as I said, like, I learned SEO. I started doing like more networking, and projects got bigger and bigger. So from that £100 website, you know, the bar kept going up and up and up. And then eventually, you know, I had a team of 6 people once I actually decided to go from like freelancer to properly incorporated company. And, you know, we just kept growing like 400% a year. We were up for High Growth Company of the Year for 2 award bodies in Edinburgh and Scotland. And yeah, it was a journey, man. And, you know, some of the clients I got to work with on that journey were really quite notable, you know, in the UK, like some really big names. So really excited to like share that journey with you. I know it's quite long, but then that brings me to the current journey, which is Subly. And so I had a client meeting. It was actually an ex-girlfriend, and we were sitting down and she was discussing, yeah, it was awkward as hell because her mum was there, and it was but it was great. And she came in and she was like, I want to start this detox, like juice cleanse subscription box. Now this is like 4.5 years ago, I think. And you know, I was like, yeah, okay, what's your budget? She was sharing her budget, and she was running through like the branding she wanted done. Because by this point we were like branding, SEO, digital development, you know, development and design. And she, you know, ran me through everything, and I was like, okay, well, the budget's not big enough to actually develop a subscription box website, because I knew from a programming perspective that was going to be quite complicated. So I was looking around, and at the time there really wasn't anything that was friendly to use to make a subscription box website. So that's when I kind of had that light bulb moment, and I was obsessed, immediately obsessed, you know. So 4 years later, been working on Subly and going from strength to strength. So that's the full long story. You did ask.
So let's go back to when you were 8 years old. I want to talk a little bit about that. You said that you used to ideate with your friend, and y'all would talk about Pokemon and you wanted to be a pilot and all these things. Well, what similarities do you see between your 8-year-old self and now your 28-year-old self, who is that entrepreneur? How have you seen yourself develop from that age to now?
Similarities is a really good question, actually. I think the main similarity is that, and this is probably a personality trait, is I've always wanted to understand how things work. Like it's like it's almost an obsession, wanting to know, like, how is this phone in my hand working, like the code, etc., etc., etc. And when I become asphyxiated on something, I will keep going until I understand it, the next layer and the next level and the next level. I think that's continued from that age until now. Which is why I've learned all these skills. So I think that's probably the biggest similarity. The other one is actually, I always say that naivety is an entrepreneur's best friend, because in order to be stupid enough, stupid enough to actually believe that you can go ahead and do this stuff and it's going to be easy, that's the stupidity of it. It'll be easy, because I used to always tell myself it'll be easy. It'll be easy. That's the naivety component that every entrepreneur actually needs, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a realism aspect as well. There's different types of entrepreneurs, but I think the most common, in my experience, the most common category is the guys who are like, it'll be easy. It'll be easy. And then they get into it and it's like, oh, this is really hard. But that's okay, because they've taken those first steps and now they're committed. So that's one thing for me that I would say is pretty consistent. Like, I've always been like, I guess over time though, that I've definitely growing a deeper understanding of what's involved with things though. So there's definitely a much more realistic opinion on it, but I still have just a little bit in the back of my head, or like even though the forefront of my head that's like, yeah, it'll be easy.
That's great. So you talked a little bit about how you would get obsessed with things, and you might tackle a new skill or a new project and just dive into it 100%.
Yeah.
So for some people, that aspect of learning that new skill is pretty difficult. right? It's pretty difficult to take a new skill like SEO, for example, and just dive into it 100%. So for somebody who might not have your natural curiosity, what can you offer them? What guidance and advice can you offer those people to help them to grasp concepts more quickly? I kind of guess what I'm saying is, how can you teach somebody else to learn as effectively as you can?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, Ben. I think so I can't remember who said it, but there was some, I believe it was it Elon? I don't know if it was Elon Musk. It was somebody who's pretty prolific anyway. And they basically said that in order to really effectively understand, to learn something specifically, and to retain it, is to understand it. So to understand the underlying core concepts of it allows you to like hold it for a lot longer. Because if you don't understand it and you're just trying to remember facts like statements or words or numbers, you'll lose it because you don't understand the core underlying concept. So for me, I think that that's really benefited me, because once I understand something, I mean, I write everything down, right? Literally, I write everything down because there's so much in my daily life that I need to like think about, write down, process, come back to it later. It's like this is my RAM, you know, like I have to have that. But once I get something or I come up with a solution or I understand it from beginning to end and I see the full picture, it's not going anywhere. It's stuck in my head. So that's the first part. I would say that like when you're learning, make sure you understand it and strive to understand what's actually making it work. The other part is, you know, diving into things, I would say is number one, actually. Like, I know some people are like, how do I learn it? Like, it's almost like asking that question isn't necessarily the right question in the sense that like you're going to look for resources. Yeah, that's good, but that's still not helping you learn. The actual only really way, I believe, is the only way to actually learn something is to do it, to actually just do it, right? Because you're going to figure out the answers and fill the gaps yourself. Like, okay, so now I'm doing SEO, right? And that's it. I'm doing SEO right now. And then going in and being like, okay, so what do I need to know? And then you're going to start researching. And then you'll start finding little snippets of information. So like, oh, here's a word. What does that mean? Then you research that word. And then it opens up, you know, another rabbit hole for that specific topic within the bigger picture. And then you end up connecting dots. And that's when you start to build a picture and then understand the whole picture. And that's when things really start to fall into place and then stick. So, I mean, that's me trying to share how I think my approach works. Everybody's different though.
Yeah, but everybody is different. I agree. I also think that hearing other people's perspectives and the ways that they go about things are very, very beneficial. And it can help somebody else have an epiphany of, oh, that's how you do it. Okay, well, let me try that. Let me apply that to my life and implement. So when you were talking about how 8 years old, you got your first set of business cards.
Yeah.
It makes me think a lot of identity, right? And you at 8 years old,
thinking about, yeah.
You at 8 years old got this new identity of potential or aspiring entrepreneur.
Yeah.
How important was that identity to you? And for somebody who's thinking about jumping in and starting their own business, how important is it that they get their identity on track and in line? And what is the right identity? Because we have to wear so many different hats.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and you hit the nail on the head, because when I was recalling that memory, I realized that maybe that was the seed, just that tiny little seed. And I didn't understand what an entrepreneur was. I didn't care for it either. I was like, sounds like a complicated whatever. I don't care. Whatever. And I was still fixated on being a pilot. I'm still very much interested and passionate about aviation. But I think it might have planted a seed in the long run, or my dad might have seen something in me that he thought, I want to foster this a little bit more, or, you know, he might project it a little bit on me because he was an entrepreneur. And I do think that it probably embedded in my identity at such a young age. I didn't latch on or identify with that until a much later point in time, where it started to become like, oh, my interests, actually, that's what that is. So I do think that there's a bit of both. I definitely think it was a seed, though, that grew over time and connected with the other components of my personality. I've had people in business around me my whole entire life, and I've been lucky for that. But I do think it's important, because I see other people who are in careers and they go the whole school college route, and then eventually they come out and they're getting to a job, and then suddenly I think because of the media that we have, the connection, the internet that brings everybody together, and entrepreneurship became really hot and cool and popular after Mark Zuckerberg made a massive explosion with Facebook. I think that became like cool, and I think people started to, it brought it to the forefront of people's minds, and again, seeds, like plant the seeds in many people's mind. It's not for everybody, obviously, and I think some people are definitely more inclined to be like wired for entrepreneurship or for a different career path, et cetera, et cetera. So, but there's also a risk there, just to make that clear, that some people think, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur because that's cool, but they're not necessarily the right person for it. Does that make sense? Like, they might like the idea of it. It's kind of like a relationship. You like the idea of that person, but actually they're not for you. And most of us go through that experience probably multiple times in our lives as well. So it's okay not to be like identifying with it completely. Does that make sense? But it definitely is important to be able to have that seed and then see it in yourself, I guess. I think that pretty much sums it up. But there was another point I had and I've now forgotten. It'll come back to me.
Okay. So let's move on to your college years. I believe you said that you were an engineer, your engineering major for the first 2 years before you left. What about engineering caused you to want to go that route? Why did that appeal to you? And kind of a two-part question, did you learn anything in that time that is now helping you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll tell you the story behind how I ended up doing civil engineering. Basically, when I was at school, high school, as you call it, secondary school in the UK, we did this thing called I think it was the Moresby test. Now, the Moresby test was like a skills-based test where, similar to how I believe an LSAT or something, I don't even know, would go, where you do all these different tests and then they're based on different skills. And afterwards, what we did was they would review it, and then they'd create like a profile, and then they'd sit down with you and they'd advise you on career paths. Okay, because when you're when you're like 16, 15, you don't really know, like, for the most part, you don't know like what's available and what you want to do and where you're going to go. Most people, there's a very small percentage of people who are like, that's what I want, like me wants to be a pilot. So it's funny because I'm not a pilot. But there you go. So anyway, I did my Moresby test, and basically my mechanical abilities were like very high. So I sat down with the advisor, and he said, okay, so this is what we recommend you do based on these skills. And mine were all engineering based, so aeronautical, civil, blah, 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 blah. So then a year later, maybe, we're sitting down applying through UCAS to go to university, and I was in the library, and my running part, like not my partner, but one of my running friends, Elsa, was sitting there, and I'm on the UCAS website scrolling, like, I need to pick a degree because everybody's picking degrees. I didn't really want to go to university, I just knew I had to. So I'm scrolling through, and I'm like, aeronautical, the bar is too high, like I don't study hard enough, like I'm good at getting decent grades without having to study, but I don't like studying, so I'm probably not going to get aeronautical engineering. They require straight A's. It was just funny because I think I read civil engineering. I was like, what the hell is that? And I looked over at Elsa, and I was like, Elsa. And she was like, what? And I was like, what's civil engineering? And I'm going to swear because I'm quoting her. And she goes, bridges and and I was like, oh, cool. That sounds cool. Apply. That's literally how I chose civil engineering. And then, a year in, 2 years in, I mean, I was like, if I do something, I try and do it as best I can. Like I was like a class rep or whatever they call it. And I got involved, good grades, first year, second year, it just changed completely and was really quite dull and intense. The math side of thing was just like, whoa, like just constantly resolving things on paper. I was like, this is so boring. And then my dad passed away, and I was like, life's too short. Just take the leap of faith. It was obviously a trigger for me. So I went in to see my advisor of studies, and I was like, I'm quitting. And he was like, yeah, I can tell you're the type of person who's not going to stay. So I'll do the paperwork, and that was it. What did it give towards my career today? Nothing. You know what? Actually, what I did learn from it was doing the stuff on the side, like the student events, like pub crawls and stuff, building websites. I learned more doing that than I did in school. And the only thing I really would say I learned from being in school is I'm better understanding of the system of the world because of the engineering component. But more importantly is the psychology of people meeting so many different new people so quickly. Is like understanding how people work, and I've always been really fascinated by psychology, and again, wanting to understand how things work. I think I got a good dose really quickly in that short space of time to understand how different types of people work from a sales perspective. So, the true answer is I don't think it contributed to my career.
So you mentioned two things that I really want to dig into. The first one being that maybe it was a test or evaluation to show you your strengths. Because as entrepreneurs and as leaders, I think it's very important that we understand what we're good at in order to know what we should double down on and hone, because that can directly be correlated to the value that we provide to the marketplace. So how would you go about, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, how would you go about identifying what your skills are, what your strengths are, and what you need to double down on?
I think we all know deep down, to be honest with you. I think the funny thing is talking about identity though, and the seed of, my dad saying a potential entrepreneur on the business card, like somebody identifies something in you, right? That can be fostered more. Awareness is like the key component. So say it can go one of both ways. So say you play a sport for the first time and you suck at it straight away, right? People might laugh, or you feel shy or insecure about it. You shut down on it. You're like, no. And it just taken somebody in that moment to be like, hey, your arm on that, that swing or whatever, or your leg on that was actually, there's something there. Like let's try again. It could have went completely different path and forked off in a different direction. And I think so that awareness is essential. But I think deep down we know we're good at something, but it needs to be confirmed by an outsider. So I think it just shows how susceptible we are to external feedback. And I think maybe asking somebody like, what do you think my strengths are as an individual, gives you a mirror to look at for a brief moment to then realize, oh, these are my strengths. Or, and you can't just rely on one source. I think asking constantly is an important thing till you start to see it in yourself and are able to be, a lot of this comes from confidence and, believing in yourself and self-love, etc. Because you have to really be like, okay, am I good at this? And then actually believe it. Because then it'll grow arms and legs, it'll snowball, it'll get, gain momentum, and you'll start going further and further down that path. But the other key part of this is that you have to like it. You can't become good at something that you don't like. You're never going to, actually, because you're not going to pursue it. But just because somebody says you're good at something doesn't mean you have to be good at it. You might have a natural inclination for something, but if you don't enjoy it, then what's the point in pursuing it? I think if you like something and aren't naturally good at it, I don't have the answer to that question, actually. I think willpower and determination trump everything at the end of the day. If you really, 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 really want to do something and you love it that much, you will become good at it if you keep trying hard enough. It might not come naturally, but if you keep persisting, it's like a business. Iterate it, keep pushing forward, learn from your mistakes, fail again. Eventually, you're going to get to that point where you're like, okay, I'm actually getting good at this. So
that's really great insight. So the second point that I wanted to touch on here and really drill down into was when you said you had your jumping off moment, your diving point, and unfortunately, and I'm sorry to hear that your father passed away. But for entrepreneurs who don't have that sort of trigger event in their life, how did they know that it's the right time to jump into entrepreneurship, to start their own business? And that also begs the question, is there a right time to become an entrepreneur and dive into it?
Yesterday. I mean, jokes aside, though, at the end of the day, like I think, I know it sounds really backwards. This is actually coming back to the thing I forgot earlier. In terms of identity, I think a big part of why some of the most hungriest entrepreneurs in the world are the way they are is because of a great deal of pain at an early point in their life. Yeah, that's it. That's pretty much the basic premise of it. So in order for change to take place, there either has to be a great deal of pleasure at the other end of it, or a great deal of pain where you currently are at, or both. And it usually is both. And I think if you're sitting and you've got this idea, for example, then you're going to need a catalyst, and there's no right time. It's just yesterday. You just got to get going, take the first step. I think for me, seeing opportunities pass by me more and more frequently causes me to be more inclined to just take action today. So I think for an entrepreneur, they need to get enough of that pain to build up to be like, okay, I'm going to actually just take the leap of faith and quit my job, because I've seen too many people do the thing I wanted to do, and I'm not doing it. And that's a good catalyst right there. If you don't have the other pain, like, somebody passing away, or a difficult situation, or a hard time, or hardship in general in your life.
So let's talk now about when you got out of college and you were building this agency. And I believe you said you started off at first by selling that website for £100, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. So what were those first steps that you took? Because for a lot of people, they just don't know how to actually take that first step. So what were yours, and how did you then build momentum and get to the point where you were making, good money, and you were really able to support yourself off of your agency?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think there's necessarily a specific recipe for success. I think oftentimes things are accidental in life. So for me, for example, that first website was an accident. I think kind of. I think it's a combination of two. They say, you create your own luck. You have to put yourself in as many situations as you possibly can until eventually you get lucky, right? And for me, I was interested in building websites, and I think I was just telling people about it. Now, this is a really important thing, by the way. A lot of people undervalue how important communication really is, and the words that come out of your mouth create your reality, so to speak. And this guy, I can't remember how I even connected with him, basically wanted a website. I was like, I'll do it for £100, because he said he couldn't spend any more than £100, and I was like, I'll do it. So I did it, and I made £100, and then suddenly you've got a small amount of momentum and validation, because we're kind of getting to a very loose form of the lean business principles, right? And I was, then I was like, okay, I want to do this again. Who can I get next? So then I start looking outwards, a bit further beyond just friends and family and their friends, and then going to local businesses, and then being like, hey, do you want a website? And just that's how it happened for me. If I was to do it now, I would say, those initial steps should be all about research, and then, talking to people who are potentially your customer and finding out if there's a need. And then if it sounds like there is, then doing the bare minimum, first small project, first whatever, try and sell it, and then, get validation for that idea. And then you're like, okay, let's take it to the next level. And it's all about small steps and iterations, but communication is where it all starts.
Absolutely. So when you went from that first £100 and then you started scaling up and you started building a team and you really started to see that success, what were some changes in how you operated your business? In other words, what did you have to do differently once you started building out a full team and started getting to that next level? What were the differences between that and when you first started?
That's a good question. I think structure, operationally is having processes and structure in place. So becoming efficient became more and more important as you start to grow, because you want to have processes that are replicable. When you start a business, it's just you, and you can do everything. So you can be a little bit messy. You can have things written in different places. But when you start to think about scaling and actually, hiring somebody else, you're going to want you want to delegate, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking, I want to do everything. Generally speaking, we're micromanagers or perfectionists. And it's hard to delegate, but when you hire somebody, because you need to delegate and you have to trust in that person, but you need to educate them. And when you do that, you'll quickly find out that you're gonna have to create a process for scaling that laterally. So when you hire the second person, you don't have to educate them all again, through the same one-on-one communication, because it's a huge time drain. So then you'll quickly learn, or I quickly learned that okay, let's document when you're educating somebody what's involved, turn it into a document that you can then just pass to somebody and be like, here's the steps that our business follows, and turn everything into a process as much as possible that eases the growth. You're never going to get it right first time, and it's going to be a constant iterative process as well. I think that's one of the things I learned in the agency, especially, actually, because you're dealing with so many people. It's a very people-focused business. Sales, you're working with your team, and you're coordinating between the client once they're onboarded and the projects, and you try and make things templated. So I think that's how things change for me, because when you start out, you do everything yourself and it's all in here, and that's okay. But if you get hit by a bus, let's hope that doesn't happen.
Right.
If you get hit by a bus, then your business is gone. If you want to leave a legacy, you want it to continue growing without you. So think about it like that. You're building this business, you're putting all this energy and time and passion into it. If you're taking out the equation because of God forbid health problems, then will it continue without you? And you want your business to be able to continue without you. That's the goal, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great goal, because like you said, you never know when something's going to happen to you. And so you don't want to be that bottleneck. I always think about, okay, one of the things that I want to accomplish in my life is I want to go to Brazil in the rainforest and, go discover an ancient ruins for 3 weeks. Well, when I'm off doing that, my business still needs to run, needs to operate. There are customers that need to see results. So I think it's brilliant what you're saying about having processes. When you're bringing on people, document exactly how you bring them up to speed. I think that's brilliant. And actually, a lot of the things that you've been saying, are brilliant. So for everybody listening, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to this interview a couple times and really try to pick out these gems that Stefan's been dropping, because they've been red hot fire, and I would hate for you to miss it. So go back and listen a couple times. So the next thing I want to talk about is when you were transitioning from the agency to your next business. Mm-hmm. And you talked a little bit about how you identified the need, but how did you exit the agency, and how did you really dive right into the next venture of yours?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something I was discussing recently, actually. And the true story is that I had two choices. Obviously, one was to try and sell the business and use that money to start the next one, or use the skills that we had and start the first version of the the product. And I went with the second option because it was more efficient. It was quicker to market. We didn't have to wait for finding a buyer and going through the paperwork, doing the due diligence, et cetera, et cetera. Would I have done it differently now? Maybe. I don't know. That might have changed with age. I don't know. I'm not in that situation right now. But I think, basically what we did was I used I had the idea in my head very quickly, and we did the brand very quickly. And then I locked myself away and because I put processes in place, I let the team continue running the business day to day. And I locked myself away and just coded. And then now and again, I'd pull on resources, like, get help from development from our developer. And, once we got to version 1.0, like by that time, the team had already realized that I was more passionate about this business, which is understandable. Like, they weren't, I don't think they're bitter about it. And if they were to watch this, I hope they weren't. And if they are, then I'm sorry. But, I think they understood it. And I actually offered them to join me on the journey. But for them, their careers were, on a good path. And at the end of the day, I think they moved on to bigger and better things as a result of the time they did with me. And, I gave them, I hope, good references. And, I'd always be a reference for those guys because they helped me get to where I am today. So I'm eternally grateful for that. But I basically just used some of the resources, like branding wise, etc., to kind of get the initial business in place. And then I just basically reverted my focus to it over time. I mean, it started as like a part-time endeavor, so I was balancing the two. But for me, I'm a focused. One of the first lessons I learned was focus is important, and that was because of one of my good friends. He's like a mentor to me, and he said to me, "Stefan, I was like, got this idea, that idea, this idea, that idea," and he was like, "You need to learn how to focus," and that stuck in my head. And he was right, because when you focus, things start to really move forward. That's what moves the needle. So, yeah, I just basically diverted the attention over time, and then did the lean startup model effectively, and iterated, validated demand, and moved from there.
So when you first started Subly until now, I believe you said it's been about 4 years. How has the growth been for the company, and what steps did you take to get users, get customers? How did you prove that, that idea, prove concept, and how did you really launch it to what it is today?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, one of the things that we did was actually we got picked up by somebody, ironically, in Edinburgh in Scotland, which is where I'm from, who published us in Product Hunt, and we got hunted, and that kind of got us our first initial traction and paying customer. And then after that, we invested a lot of time up front on content, to be honest with you. Content was one of our main drivers at the beginning. Over time, like, to be honest with you, we're pretty steady growth, and we've stayed very lean, and we haven't spent too much on advertising. It's all mostly been organic and word of mouth, and a little bit of paid ads and stuff like that. But I think it's possible to do it with time and energy if you're limited on money, because we're bootstrapped, just to make that 100% clear. 100% bootstrap business as of today. Again, I'm evaluating always whether or not we should take it to the next level by raising funding, or we just can take it to the next level by putting more energy and time into it. So it's been very much organic, communication with customers, word of mouth, etc. So, but yeah, the growth has been nice and steady for the most part over the last three and a half years since we launched. And I think that's a nice place to be, but always looking for opportunities to take it even further. So we're going through a really interesting phase right now of like iterating faster and focusing more on our marketing, because our product has come from strength to strength. When we first launched, our product was embarrassing. That's the truth of an MVP. Do you know what I mean? So we were doing it right in that sense, and I think if you're embarrassed by your product, you're probably doing it right. And that's what my good friend says to me all the time. He's like, if you're embarrassed by it, then you've done it right, because you've got that real minimum viable product. But our product's like coming from strength to strength right now, and I'm really excited by that. So yeah, I think from my perspective, I believe in content strategies are very important, but they're not as effective as they used to be, because people are kind of getting clued up to it now. So it's just like anything, you just got to keep innovating and finding out and staying at the edge of marketing, and what's out there.
Absolutely. So for your business, can you, for the people who are not as familiar with Subly as maybe you would like them to be, can you fill us in on exactly what it does, why it's so great, and who it's the best for?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, Subly is a turnkey solution for anybody who wants to start or run or add a subscription box to, start a subscription box or add it to an existing business. And it's like you have the website builder, the billing management, order management, communication with your customer management. It's a turnkey solution. It's effectively, I hate to use the analogy, but it's like Shopify but for subscription box businesses or subscription businesses. And it's perfect for the. I'm gonna lose you in a second, by the way, because my headphones are dying. I didn't realize this was going to go on for so long. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great, cool. So yeah, basically the I lost you for a second there. It's perfect for if you're wanting to start from scratch, or if you want to add it to an existing website, because you can embed our checkout, which is gorgeous, on your existing website, and it makes subscription a lot simpler because it's notoriously complicated. And I think that pretty much summarizes it.
So to play devil's advocate a little bit and to, really help us get a better understanding of Subly, what is the advantage of using Subly over competitors like, WordPress with a plugin, or Shopify with a plugin, or something like ClickFunnels or
Sure.
software like that?
Yeah, so the real advantage is that Shopify with a plugin it's the Shopify with a plugin. They're two separate products that you're making work together. There's two moving parts there, which can add complexity. I'm not saying it's not a good solution. It is a good solution. It just it's a consideration that later down the line it might be difficult, and there's maybe potential additional costs there. With WordPress, you need some technical know-how. Have I lost you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you can hear me. I'm really running on empty fumes right now. So yeah, basically, can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Sorry. I think like with Shopify, with WordPress, you need technical know-how and knowledge, and not everybody has that. And if you want to do something that's not within like their main feature set, then you're going to have to hire a developer. You can't just like request a feature, or for the most part, we've had so many different cases where we've covered the majority of cases in our software. So, I'd like to think that we're just the easy solution and the least friction to getting to that point, and the most cost-effective way of doing it as well, without having to hire a developer or get pieces pulled together to make it work or make your business model work. It's just easier.
Definitely. So for the future, right? We talked a little bit about your past and where you came from and how you got to where you are. Actually, before we go to the future, I want to hear about right now. So what is the biggest focus for you as of right now on your journey?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. For right now, it's scaling, to be honest with you. It's scaling, it's taking it to the next level, and proving that you can bootstrap for a fair amount of time, if not completely. I mean, look at MailChimp. Look at Basecamp. These guys are huge. I mean, okay, they're anomalies, they're unicorns, as you want to call them, but they just followed the book, They did it step by step, and they iterated it and improved and communicated with their customers and listened to them. And I think that's where we're at just now, is like we're just trying to start to pick up some speed now. We've done a lot of learning, and at this point in time, we've got a really, really great product, and our customers love our approach, and they it seems to be that they really like what we're about. And I think we've built like a good community as well, and I think the fact that we are in that iterative process shows that we care. And we're not just trying to please VCs, or venture, outside funders. So I think that makes a difference. Being bootstrapped kind of adds a bit of rock and roll to it, which is kind of our branding, which is quite cool. So yeah, our focus right now is definitely scaling and speeding up.
Absolutely. So your business and you being the founder of that business, you guys are on the leading edge of running a subscription-based business. So for somebody who is looking to get into that space, can you, as definitively as possible, share with people and drop some serious value here, my man. Share with people how to really build a subscription-based business. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, a subscription business is difficult. I think the main thing that you need to do is, a lot of people, and this is for any business, but subscription, I see this happening all the time. People actually, they always think it's only going to work if it's not been done before. That's bullshit. Excuse my language, it's bullshit. Basically, you want to validate the need for it, and you want to find your specific target audience who you're targeting. And then the main things, and this again applies to all online businesses, but because subscription is so new, we see a lot of new entrepreneurs who are very, very, very new to this, is making sure that your value proposition is good. Make sure it's aligned with your copy on your website. Make sure you're building trust straight away, and then having your messages aligned. That's missing from so many startups I see, and it's okay. I mean, it's all learning at the end of the day, and we start with the basics, and then we expand our knowledge, and then we learn from there, and we expand our knowledge further. I think the other thing that people need to think about, though, is their cash flow situation. So with regards to subscription, you want to plan your stock for the next shipment, which is next month or next quarter, for example. And having that logistics in place from day one is quite important. I mean, there is going to be, again, a learning curve there, but really think about, how's my cash flow going to be? I'm going to have to order product. Am I going to have the money from the customers up front, or am I not? Subly is pretty good for that, because we've got like cutoff logic and like shipping date logic built in for the monthly stuff. And we're learning with our customers on that process. But the main thing is, I would run a pre-launch, get validation, check to see if there's a need, learn quickly how you're going to be able to acquire customers as well. Where are you going to find them? Who are they? Draw a picture in your head of that person and then put it on paper. Who is that person? What's their name? How old are they? How much do they earn? Where do they reside? Where do they reside? Where are they going to be hanging out? Who do they talk to? And then talk to them. Find that person. Talk to them. There's 7 billion people on this planet. I could guarantee you're going to find some of the people that you want to target.
Exactly. So, I want to do sort of a live case study, if you will. And I want to do this because I think it will, again, really prove how much of an authority you are in this space. And also, I love case studies. So, okay. If you'll kind of humor me a little bit, if you will.
Sure, I'm trying my best.
Yeah. So let's take Project Egg, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Project Egg is a podcast where we bring on experts like yourself in various fields, and the purpose is to educate and inspire existing and aspiring entrepreneurs to turn their dreams into reality. Now, as a business, we need to find something to sell. And as a podcast, I love the idea of having a subscription sort of model to it, whether it be a membership site or something else, right? So given that we have tons of very high quality content, and maybe there are a few courses here and there that we could rope together from the different experts and whatnot, how would you turn this business into a subscription model? So what would you sell, and how would you go about selling it?
I think I missed part of the question. Are you talking about, what business are we talking about? Egg specifically?
Yes, we're talking about Project Egg, the podcast itself. Given that we have all this content, do we sell the content? What do we sell? How do we sell it?
Okay. Well, I think first of all, what you'd want to do is send out a message to your customers asking them what they find the most value from in your project. Where does the most value lie? And then where the least value lies, right? And then there's different models you could take. You can maybe do like a paywall for the highest value content, or you could do like a freemium model whereby you could actually give it to them for free and then they upgrade for specific exclusive content. That could work quite nicely for this one. And then another one is that you could give like a free trial for like 60 days and learn how to optimize for getting the customer, building that relationship with them and having them a habit basically of them reading your content and consuming it, and then learning how to get them embedded with that. And then asking them, okay, your trial's up, like convert to a paying customer. I think the freemium model would work best for Project Egg in this case. But I would definitely communicate with the customers to find out through primary research what the most valuable pieces of like where's most of the value coming in for them, and then maybe you could even do an educational course, for example.
That's a great idea.
An educational course would be quite a nice idea, perhaps. And then if you wanted to take it another step further, then you could maybe do physical products that support that. What tools do entrepreneurs need? And that's another upsell. And then you can start to develop like a value ladder and like have a funnel. So the free content, then you have a course, and then you'd upsell to like consulting, or maybe like another lateral cross sell from the educational courses to have the supplementary physical products. So there's a lot you could do there. But the first starting point would be to figure out where the value lies of your existing business. I had a conversation with somebody recently on a consulting call actually about how to move them from from a free product to a freemium product, and that was basically the kind of advice that I gave them.
That's great. That's great. And I do appreciate you humoring me in this, because I think it's really cool for people who are watching this to see your expertise and knowledge in action, working with something that they're already watching. It's like you're in it now. We're all part of it. I think it's really, really cool. So thank you for doing that.
You're more than welcome. And I think it's really cool as well. I think having those kind of think tank sessions and seeing what comes up is really very insightful if you're a part of it. So I think it's a good idea.
Especially on a live call where it will be put into history forever.
Well, then it's unfortunate then that everything's running out of battery right now. Hey, it's okay. This is then it's real. It's not rehearsed.
Absolutely. So, Stefan, I really do appreciate you coming on the show today. I do have just 2 more questions for you. I know you're running out of battery and running out of time as well. So, I'll try to cut this short. But first question for you is, we talked about the past. We talked about the present. What does the future hold for you?
Woo. Let's just say I'm hungry. I mean, for me, I think I want to establish my first win, proper win. I've got a lot of small wins, little projects, lots of things that build up credibility when you tell the full picture. But I want to be able to say, I did this. And then really my next thing I want to move on to, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's going to be more impactful in the world. I think that a lot of where I've gotten to today is about kind of helping others succeed and helping ultimately, them grow their businesses. And that's great because I feel like I'm giving something to them, but I feel like there's something even greater that I could do that could, rather than be focused around helping others succeed, but actually contribute something back to the world, or, something that can have a real impact on society and the bigger challenges that we're facing. There's some serious challenges that are out there that people don't have the courage to actually say, or they're not crazy enough to go, okay, I'm going to have a go at solving that. We just accept it and we're like, okay, cool, I'm focusing on my life, because we're very tunnel visioned. We're all, here's a really great nugget, actually. A lot of people get, self-conscious. They're worried about what do people think. Here's a little experiment. When you sit down, next time you're in Starbucks, watch people, right? And see, if you feel, for example, self-conscious, walking through a place, right? What do people think of me? Now observe yourself, now that you've observed yourself walking through a place, like public place, you can identify that you're thinking about yourself, right? Now apply that to everybody else. Now, when you're next in a Starbucks, look at everybody else. They're in their own worlds. They're only caring and thinking about themselves. So there's no reason to feel self-conscious, because everybody's so self-obsessed. Really, they're so consumed by their own issues and problems that they're not thinking about you. There's no reason to be upset, or not upset, but feeling insecure or concerned about what other people think. So just do it. That's a nugget. But I think for me, it's going to be taking it to the next level, really. And I know it sounds vague and loose, but contributing back, impact, bigger challenges and bigger issues that need solved in the world. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. So, Stefan, I really do appreciate your time today. I got one more question for you. I have really had a pleasure talking with you today. The last question for you today is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I did not ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
Nothing specific. I think it kind of goes all back to the same place, that we're all dealing with stuff, right? And I think being empathetic is a really important part of business and regarding your customers, but also other people in life. And that's just like a personal level thing. But there's nothing specific about myself that I don't think we've covered. I don't know. That's a really good question, though. Damn, I wish I had a better answer than that.
Well, Stefan, again, I really do appreciate your time. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. For people who want to take it to the next level with you and get more involved with what you're doing and, maybe get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on here, by the way. I appreciate it. Best place to find Subbly is, subbly.co. But if you want to talk to me about bootstrapping or business or, just generally, talk shop, you can find me on Twitter. It's just my full name, @Stefan Pretty, and that's F for Stefan. And also on Medium, I publish content now and again. But no, I like to write some essays on there. So you can find me on Medium as well, using my name, full name as well, Stefan Pretty. So I look forward to connecting with like-minded people.
Absolutely. So to everybody that's listening, I want to thank you guys so much. Y'all are the reason that we do what we do. And hopefully this has fulfilled its purpose of educating and inspiring you to help you turn your dreams into reality. If you guys are thinking about launching a subscription business, now you have the tool to do it. You have the expert here talking to you. You have the tool. That's subbly.co, subbly.co. Go over, check it out, talk to Stefan, make it happen. There's nothing that's stopping you guys. There's nothing that is preventing you from doing the things that you want to do. And you guys are fantastic. You guys are the best. I love you guys very much. So thank you for coming on the show. Stefan, take it away, man. Can you wrap up for us this last 30 seconds?
Absolutely. All I'm going to say is thanks for listening, to anybody who's still listening to us ramble. And Ben, thanks for reaching out, man. I appreciate it. I've had a great time. Sorry about the battery situations. I'm actually pretty sure that it's literally just cut out now again. And I can hear you good. But you know where I am. Love to help you with your subscription business endeavors, or just in general about bootstrapping. And keep rocking on, guys. Keep pushing forward. It's going to be tough, but it'll be even better at the end of it.
Great. All right, everybody. You have a fantastic day. Let's build a better world together. Bye.